by talking about guilt. And these are civil cases. You only talk about guilt in criminal cases.
In 1993, Judge Wapner was television royalty. By 2017, he died forgotten in hospice care. Between those years lies a story of broken promises and crushing defeats. The People's Court dumped him without ceremony. His new show bombed within 2 seasons. He battled depression and multiple strokes. But the worst blow came in 2015. Something happened to his daughter that shattered him completely. Friends say he never recovered. The man who brought justice to millions couldn't find peace for himself. His final confession reveals everything. Joseph Wapner came into the world on November 15, 1919, in Philadelphia. His parents, Harry and Lena, were Russian Jews who had fled persecution in search of something better. They worked endless hours running a small clothing store in South Philadelphia, barely keeping ahead of bills and the biting prejudice that came with their religion. Most shops in their area refused to hire Jews. Even in a city full of immigrants, Jewish families like the Wapners were pushed into tightly packed neighborhoods and had to build their lives in quiet resistance. Joseph watched his parents endure 16-hour workdays, juggling hardship with pride. That quiet strength became the lens through which he saw the world. Then the crash came. It was 1929, and Joseph was just 10 when the economy collapsed. His father's store, once a modest success, began to unravel. Savings vanished, customers stopped coming, and worry settled into the family like winter frost. In Philadelphia, 1 out of every 4 workers lost their job by 1930. The streets grew quieter, and Joseph saw grown men cry over lost wages. He would never forget his father's voice warning, "Never gamble with money you can't afford to lose." That sentence stuck with him, shaping a lifelong hatred for risk and a hunger for structure. He found himself craving answers, craving order, craving justice. He first tasted that idea of justice in the dusty classrooms of his public school. Joseph, still in his early teens, was already the loudest voice in debate club. At 12, he was staging mock trials, arguing points like he was born in a courtroom. He'd witnessed firsthand how landlords tricked his father into impossible rent hikes. He couldn't fight back then, but he swore he would someday. Around that time, a headline caught his eye: the Scopes trial. A Tennessee teacher had been arrested for teaching evolution, and the case set fire to national conversation. Joseph read about Clarence Darrow, the defense attorney who stood against blind tradition, and decided he wanted to be just like him. He didn't know how, but he was sure of one thing: the little guy deserved someone in his corner. The Great Depression deepened, and the Wapners had to downsize. They moved into a smaller row house, but the neighborhood was full of others just like them, immigrants chasing scraps of the American dream. Joseph helped out however he could. He delivered newspapers before school, watching people's faces through screen doors as they read about bank failures and war rumors. His mother would talk at night about fleeing pogroms in Russia back in 1905, of violence she'd seen with her own eyes. Her voice shook when she spoke, and he never forgot it. Those nights hardened him. They didn't kill his hope, but they made him serious. By 14, Joseph's obsession with justice had turned into something more. He still clung to the Scopes trial articles, still followed court cases like other kids followed baseball. His father's business losses and his mother's pain created a weight that never left his chest. He promised himself he would never let others walk through life unprotected. By 16, his promises were put to the test. In 1935, Nazi sympathizers were growing bolder in parts of America. Joseph joined a Jewish youth group that protested their gatherings. One night, during a protest on the streets of Philadelphia, he was caught in a fistfight with a group of sympathizers. One of them slashed him across the cheek. The scar stayed with him forever. He later said it taught him how justice could leave a mark, but it was worth it. He graduated from South Philadelphia High School in 1937. He'd earned a full scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, one of the best in the country. There, he majored in political science, soaked in Roosevelt's New Deal, and joined the debate team. By 1938, he'd won a regional tournament, arguing against American isolationism. A bold move in a time when most people still wanted to stay out of Europe's wars. The FBI took notice. They labeled him radical and added his name to their watch list. He wasn't afraid. If anything, it gave him more reason to keep going. He believed silence was dangerous. In 1941, Joseph graduated and packed up for California enrolling in the University of Southern California Law School. He'd spent that summer interning at a Philadelphia law firm and stumbled across a probate case that rattled him. A widow had been cheated out of her inheritance by a slick-talking lawyer. Joseph helped uncover the fraud. It was the first time he'd seen how cruel the legal system could be, but also how it could be used to make things right. That case lit a fuse in him. He wouldn't stop until he had the power to fix things like that himself. From 1941 to 1944, while finishing law school, he worked as a clerk for a civil rights lawyer. The country was locking up Japanese-American families, forcing them into internment camps. Joseph read the appeals. He saw the way the government could crush people when fear took over. He took notes, watched court arguments, and told himself he would always fight for fairness, not just for people who looked like him, but for everyone who was pushed aside. In 1942, he met a young nursing student named Mickey Nebenzal at a USC dance. Her family had escaped the war in Europe. Their conversations weren't light. They talked about justice, about what would come after the war, about building something better. She understood him. That scared him a little, but it also gave him strength. She believed in what he was trying to become. In 1943, he led a student protest against tuition hikes. Wartime inflation had made college nearly impossible for many, and he couldn't sit still. The protest wasn't approved. USC suspended him. It nearly ended his degree. He had to meet with the dean and argue for his own reinstatement. He won. That moment taught him that speaking up had a cost. But silence was always more dangerous. By June 1944, just after graduation, Joseph joined the Army. He was 24 years old when he became a second lieutenant in the 401th Infantry Regiment, part of the 103rd Infantry Division. By winter, he was in France, marching through the frozen Vosges Mountains. The snow came up to their knees, and the frost bit through their boots. The enemy fire didn't stop. The terrain was brutal. He was still just a young man, but he had to lead men through the dark, screaming woods. One night, his platoon was pinned down by a German machine gun nest. The position was strong, and his men were bleeding. Joseph crawled forward in the cold, through mud and gunfire. He led the attack himself, tossing grenades, shouting orders, risking his life. It took over 3 hours, but they cleared the nest. He saved 12 lives that night. The U.S. Army gave him the Bronze Star for valor. He never bragged about it. On January 23, 1945, he was hit. A piece of shrapnel tore into his right leg while he tried to drag a wounded sergeant out of the snow. The pain was sharp and deep. In a cold field hospital, under flickering lights and barely any anesthesia, they operated twice. He remembered every stitch. The leg was saved, but it left him with a limp. He never used a cane. He didn't want pity. In March 1945, he was given the Purple Heart. He didn't talk much about it. He'd seen 20 men from his unit die in one ambush. The faces stayed with him. After he came home, he suffered nightmares. His moods would swing. Back then, they didn't call it PTSD, but the pain was real. He just worked harder. That summer, in 1945, he was discharged. The war was over, but something inside him had changed. He walked with a limp, but stood straighter than ever. He wanted peace, not just the absence of war, but real peace, the kind that comes from fairness, from truth, from justice. Years later, in a rare interview, he revealed a secret he'd carried since the war. Near the end of the campaign, his unit had captured a surrendering SS officer. They'd just uncovered a mass grave nearby. Joseph said the man knew who had ordered the killings. In that moment, with death still fresh in the air, he made a choice. He shot the officer. There was a quiet court-martial afterward, but the army buried it. He never told the story until decades later. He called it the hardest decision of his life. It haunted him, but it also shaped his belief in law, that even in war, there had to be rules. Joseph Wapner stepped into the legal world just after World War II. It was 1946 when he passed the California bar exam, carrying the weight of wartime wounds from his military service. He joined a Los Angeles firm that handled personal injury claims. These cases were growing fast due to rising car accidents and factory mishaps. In 1947, Wapner won a pedestrian accident case against a trucking company. The driver had sped through a city street and hit a man crossing the road. Wapner showed the driver ignored a yield, and the jury awarded $12,000 to the injured man. That single win didn't just close a case. It opened the door to a promising legal career and gave Wapner a name in the legal circles of Los Angeles. By 1948, He wasn't just chasing wins for paying clients. He had taken on more than 50 pro bono cases for Holocaust survivors. These clients were seeking payments from American insurance companies for policies bought before the war. The companies were dodging responsibility. Wapner found they used loopholes to deny claims. He brought 12 of them together for a group case. After months of work, they got $250,000 in total, about $2,800 each. That was unheard of for the time. His efforts made national news. It forced some insurers to change how they treated Holocaust claims. Jewish organizations and human rights advocates praised Wapner for standing up when others looked away. At just 35 years old in 1954, Wapner was appointed to the Los Angeles Municipal Court. He became the youngest judge in the county's history. Most of the time, he heard traffic and small claims disputes. To keep things moving, he came up with what lawyers started calling the gavel rule. If someone dragged the hearing out, he banged the gavel and told them to cut the nonsense. The method worked. His court moved faster than others. Lawyers respected him. Even frustrated litigants admitted he was fair. But not every case brought praise. In 1956, he ruled on a domestic violence case that would shadow him for years. A woman had accused her husband of abuse, but she later asked the court not to jail him. Wapner listened. He gave the man community service instead of prison time. Women's groups were outraged. They said it sent the wrong message and made victims more vulnerable. Wapner stood by the decision, saying he respected the victim's choice. But the controversy stuck and became part of the larger fight over how courts handled abuse cases. In 1958, he took on a landlord trying to evict tenants from a crumbling building. The tenants weren't just behind on rent, they were living in slum conditions. Wapner visited the property. Broken pipes, shattered windows, exposed wires. He ruled in favor of the tenants and ordered the landlord to pay back rent. The case made headlines. City officials were pushed to improve housing codes. It was more than a legal win. It was a blow against slumlords who had gotten away with ignoring basic safety for years. A year later, in 1959, Wapner faced something more dangerous than legal arguments. A corporate executive tried to bribe him during a pollution case. Wapner didn't flinch. He wore a wire and secretly recorded the bribe offer. That tape became evidence in court. The executive was convicted and sentenced. Wapner's stand reminded everyone that judges could still choose integrity over influence. His move sent ripples across the legal world. By 1961, he was promoted to the Superior Court and assigned to the Civil Division. One of his toughest cases landed in 1963. 2 pilots had died in a crash caused by defective aircraft parts. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Engineers, families, and aviation experts packed the courtroom. In December, the jury awarded $1.2 million to the victims' families. That payout echoed through legal circles. It set a new bar for product liability cases and became a reference point in California law. Then came Hollywood, not in lights, but in labor strife. In 1964, a studio strike involving 500 workers threatened to freeze several big productions. Wapner was tapped to mediate. He met with union reps and executives for nearly 2 weeks, often deep into the night. On April 15th, he brokered a deal, a 10% wage increase and new safety standards. Both sides signed. The strike ended without violence, and Wapner's role became a case study in labor negotiation. But just 2 years later, in 1966, his name was in headlines for different reasons. During a medical malpractice trial, a juror claimed Wapner had shown bias toward the defense. The state bar opened an ethics probe. For months, his career hung in the balance. When the case closed, Wapner was cleared, but the scare changed him. He banned off-the-record whispers in his courtroom and required all communication to be official. His reforms spread to other judges who admired how he turned criticism into policy. In 1968, his caseload passed 300 per year. That year, he oversaw a case that tested the city's core. Parents and civil rights activists were fighting racial segregation in LA public schools. Wapner held hearings for months. Teachers, parents, and experts filled the court. In June, he ruled in favor of school integration and ordered busing plans to be carried out. Segregationist groups lashed out. Wapner got death threats. Security was tightened, but his ruling stood. Higher courts upheld it. His order became a blueprint for desegregation across the country. Through it all, Wapner kept giving back. In the mid-60s, he started holding Wapner rounds for young lawyers. Every week, they gathered in his chambers. They talked through real court losses. One session in 1967 stuck with many. A young attorney had lost a case by ignoring jury communication. Wapner told the group, "Always listen to your client, not just the law." It wasn't just a quote. It became a lesson for a generation of future judges. Then came the corruption scandal in 1969. Wapner found out a fellow judge was taking bribes in divorce cases. He didn't hesitate. He reported the judge anonymously. The fallout was massive. 3 people, including the judge, were removed. Wapner got threats. His colleagues turned cold, but he didn't back off. He later said, "Justice must be blind, not bought." The scandal led to sweeping changes in court oversight. In 1970, he was appointed presiding judge over the entire LA municipal court system. That meant managing 200 judges, 15 branches, and more than 100 courtrooms. The backlog was drowning the system. Wapner rewired the process. He introduced case tracking systems and formed teams to prioritize cases. By 1971, the backlog had shrunk by 40%. It became a model for urban courts across the U.S. That same year, he oversaw a police corruption trial tied to an LAPD officer. It wasn't just one cop. The case exposed deep rot and cover-ups inside the department. Wapner's rulings and public testimony forced the LAPD to reorganize its internal affairs unit. Years later, when the Rampart scandal exploded, many said it all started with that case. In 1972, Wapner brought mock trials into schools. Over 3 years, he reached more than 10,000 students. He made the law real for kids, showing them how courtrooms worked. It changed lives, but not everyone liked it. Some called it activism. He ignored the noise and kept showing up to classrooms. In 1973, a radical group threatened to bomb the courthouse. Wapner evacuated over 5,000 people. He worked with the LAPD and FBI. No one was hurt, but the experience shook him. He had nightmares for years, but the incident led to security reforms that protected courts across the country. In 1974, he allowed video evidence in small claims cases. It gave people a new way to prove their side. Within a year, court delays dropped in half. Other states followed. It was a quiet revolution that reshaped how evidence could be used in courtrooms. Then came the unthinkable. In 1975, a man who had lost a custody case tried to kill Wapner. He waited outside Wapner's house and fired multiple shots. One grazed the judge's arm. For months, Wapner lived under protection. The man was caught, but rumors swirled about a larger plan. Even after healing, Wapner carried the memory with him. It never left. By 1980, producer Ralph Edwards approached him with an idea, a courtroom show with real cases. Wapner said no. He feared it would cheapen his reputation. But Edwards promised no scripts, no fakery, just real disputes and real justice. On September 14, 1981, they filmed the first episode of The People's Court. When it aired on October 12, 1981, the first case involved a $2,500 ruined suit. The dry cleaner blamed the customer. Wapner listened and dropped a line that stuck. "Take the ballerina, and you can leave the tutu." That single case drew 9 million viewers. In 1986, Joseph Wapner wasn't just a TV judge. He was a cultural force. 12 million people watched the People's Court every day, more than the number who could name a Supreme Court justice. Over 100 markets aired the show. He got around 5,000 fan letters every month. Some of them came with marriage proposals. Wapner's calm way of speaking and steady tone gave the show something different. Viewers saw him not just as a judge, but someone they could trust. When he appeared on The Tonight Show, it didn't feel odd. By then, he was more than a judge on television. He had become the face of fairness in a loud, messy TV world. Then came the barking dog case in 1987. What started as a complaint about noise turned into a legal claim for thousands in property damage and emotional distress. Instead of taking sides, Wapner split the cost right down the middle. That decision became famous. It was taught in law schools as an example of how to settle civil disputes with balance. Professors pointed to it as a model of how to deal with emotional conflicts in court without declaring a clear winner. That episode aired again and again. Law students studied it, viewers remembered it, and producers realized Wapner wasn't just running a show. He was setting a tone for how justice could look on screen. But by 1988, things began to shift behind the scenes. Advertisers wanted more. They pushed producers to add cases with cheating partners, family drama, and messier fights. Wapner wouldn't allow it. He refused to air stories that felt like tabloids. Even when ratings slipped, he stayed firm. He said the show should stand for dignity. This created tension with network heads, but Wapner didn't bend. His stand against sensationalism helped shape how other courtroom shows would operate in the years that followed. Some producers respected it, others found it stubborn. But either way, he wasn't going to turn the courtroom into circus. By 1990, his paycheck reflected just how valuable he was. He earned $50,000 for every episode, but he didn't just cash it in. He quietly gave away 10% to legal aid groups, making sure people who couldn't afford lawyers had a shot at representation. His famous phrase, "Make your final offer," came from a real 1991 hearing where a litigant kept changing his claim. Wapner told him to settle it once and for all. That phrase stuck. Fans quoted it. Writers used it. It summed up the way he ran his courtroom. Simple, direct, and final. But the workload wore him down. In 1992, during a live taping, Wapner collapsed. The set doctor treated him quickly. Most people would have stopped. Wapner didn't. He finished the episode, ruling on a slip-and-fall case while still groggy from medication. He later admitted that the constant travel and filming made him miss birthdays, holidays, even quiet dinners. He was living inside the show, and it was eating away at him. Stress and exhaustion became part of the job. Viewers only saw the calm judge. They didn't see the toll it took. Then came the 1993 memo. It was never meant for the public, but someone leaked it. It said producers were thinking of replacing Wapner with a younger judge. He was 73. The memo crushed him. He'd never imagined being pushed aside like that. It wasn't just about ratings anymore. It was about being replaced. And he didn't find out from the network. He found out from his brother-in-law, who saw it in the San Francisco Chronicle. Wapner felt blindsided. He called it a stab in the back. Those words came up in interview after interview. The ratings had dropped, and the network thought a new face could bring them back. But no one had told Wapner. No warning, no thanks. His last day came without a farewell. No special episode, no montage, just silence. He had filmed 2,184 episodes since 1981. Still, he was let go without any recognition. Later, he said producers owed him $200,000 in back pay. It covered unpaid fees and appearance money. He took the matter to court. They settled quietly. The money helped, but the emotional wound didn't heal. He felt erased, like the 12 years of his life had been wiped clean from the show's memory. For Wapner, it wasn't about the money. It was about the respect he never got on his way out. In 1997, the show came back, but not with him. Ed Koch took over. Wapner didn't tune in. He didn't support it. He didn't endorse it. He said it wasn't the same anymore. The new version, he felt, lacked the heart. It was all gimmicks. No justice. He wanted no part of it. That silence from Wapner echoed louder than words. Even as the show found new fans, the original judge turned away. To him, it wasn't his court anymore. In 2002, Wapner gave an interview that stirred things again. He took aim at Judge Judy. He said she was rude, that her habit of shouting at people was disrespectful to the legal system. He worried it gave viewers the wrong idea about what real judges do. He stood by his own style. Steady, calm, thoughtful. Some fans agreed with him. Others thought he was out of touch. But Wapner didn't back down. He said TV judges should remember they're still judges. That same year, Wapner tried something new. He launched Animal Court, a show about real disputes involving pets and animals. It aired from 1998 to 2000. In one case, he awarded $800 for a dog bite and vet bills. But the ratings were never strong. It hovered below 1 million viewers. After 2 seasons, the network pulled the plug. Wapner's TV comeback didn't stick, and he never returned to regular TV again. The courtroom that once defined him now belonged to others. He wasn't done fighting, though. In 1994, he gave a deposition in a wrongful termination case. He accused the producers of firing him because of his age. He said they mocked the way he walked. He had a limp from his time in World War II. The case never went to trial, but it stayed with him. The anger never faded. For more than 20 years, he spoke about it. Not to stir trouble, but because the hurt never fully left. Even as his health declined, he didn't disappear. In 2002, he had a stroke. He was 82. His speech changed slightly, but he recovered enough to appear on the People's Court one last time. It was his 90th birthday, in 2009. The show brought him back for a fender bender case. He handled it like old times. That same year, in November, he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His speech was short, funny, and sharp. He said, "I gavel more stars than this sidewalk has." His family stood by him that day. It was one of his proudest moments. But 2 years later, everything changed. His daughter Sarah died in 2015 at age 56. She had battled heart disease and gone through a heart transplant. In the end, it wasn't enough. Wapner shut down after that. He stopped going out. He told friends the loss broke what was left of his heart. He had lived through war, through betrayal, through fame and fall, but nothing compared to losing Sarah. By 2016, his health was slipping fast. He had suffered more strokes. He moved into hospice care, and on February 26, 2017, he died. He was 97. His wife, Mickey, had stood by him for 71 years. His sons, David and Fred, carried on the family name. Fred even became a judge. Wapner's life had been full of hard work, honor, and heartbreak. Even in his last days, people respected him. His impact stayed alive in reruns, in interviews, and in the hundreds of shows that copied his style. And in 2018, a final revelation emerged. His family shared letters that showed Wapner had suffered undiagnosed PTSD from his service in World War II. He had carried that pain in silence. He never told the world. Instead, he buried himself in work. That was how he coped. It explained so much. The long hours, the collapse, the fierce control of his courtroom, the need for fairness. Underneath the robe, there was a man still fighting his own war. The world saw a judge. His family knew the soldier. And with that, Joseph Wapner's story became something bigger than television. It became a story of quiet strength, private battles, and a lifelong pursuit of justice that never really left him.